Welcome back. Today, we're jumping into the 7 process steps for actually creating a journalistic story. From that very first spark of an idea all the way to the final polish. So, remember where we left off? Stefan Schultz had his 5 principles for integral journalism all worked out. But principles are one thing. Putting them into practice is a whole different ballgame. He needed a practical way to make it all work. And the idea he landed on? It was so simple, but honestly, incredibly effective. He just took the standard, everyday production process for a news story and mapped his principles right onto each phase. What came out of it was this 7-step framework that we're about to walk through right now. All right, let's dive in. Now, the very first step in Schultz's model is, well, it's a pretty unusual one. See, it doesn't start with research or sources or writing. Nope, it starts with the journalist's own personality. For Schultz, this is the absolute bedrock of everything. He's convinced that as journalists mature as human beings, their stories will naturally mature right along with them. It really all starts from within. Now, what's so crucial to get here is that these are extensions. They're not replacements. The traditional duties, being factually accurate, thinking critically, that's all still the foundation. But this model says journalists also need to be more. They need to be mediators in conflict, companions helping society through change, and a whole lot more. It's really about expanding the role, not throwing the old one away. So, with that personal foundation in place, we can move into the next phase, actually finding the story. And this is where the hunt for a topic begins, but, as you'll see, in a very different way. So step 2 isn't just about finding the next hot take on whatever's trending. It's a practice he calls topic sensing. And that really means choosing what to cover based on mature human values, not just on what's new or what's going to get the most clicks. And here is the key tool for doing that, the story ikigai. It's a really cool framework for balancing the needs of 4 key groups: society as a whole, the audience, the business side of things, and of course, the journalist himself. The goal is to find that perfect sweet spot, a topic that truly serves all 4. Okay, so once a topic is chosen with that kind of deep intentionality, it's time for research. And again, the approach here is just so much broader. The cornerstone of this step is a really unique tool called the Integral Research Map. So what this map does is it gets journalists to look at any given story from 8 completely different dimensions of life. This helps them get a much better handle on complex, interconnected issues, and it boosts what Schultz calls resonance intelligence, which is basically a deep, intuitive feel for the subject. Of course, you can imagine, right? All this expanded research brings in a flood of information. So how in the world do you find the real story in all that noise? Well, that brings us to the crucial 4th step, finding the focus. The key here is a complete shift in approach. Instead of trying to force a focus through analysis, the integral way is about letting the story emerge organically. It's about allowing the true heart of the story to rise up from the journalist's own intuition, which has been informed by all that deep research. So, once that focus has emerged and it feels crystal clear, then it's time to build the structure. This is where you really start to shape the narrative and bring the story to life for your audience. And the main tool for this is the IJ Construction Kit. You can think of it like a supercharged storyboard. It brings together a whole range of narrative techniques, everything from classic dramaturgy to different plot archetypes, all to create a really captivating story. So, with the blueprint in hand, we move to production. This is the craft, right? This is actually writing or filming or recording the final piece. Here, Schultz's model provides specific tools to help the journalist get into a state of flow for maximum creativity. It also puts a big focus on language, specifically using what he calls 6 integral language qualities to make sure the story is told with real sensitivity and depth. And finally, we get to the last step, fine-tuning the story. But this isn't just a simple proofread. Oh no, it's a unique and really powerful feedback process. I just love this idea. You get many pairs of eyes to look at the same story, but each person is given a different observation anchor. This generates this incredibly rich and diverse feedback, and what Schultz also calls feelback, which taps into the emotional resonance of the piece. So, with these 7 steps all laid out, Stefan Schultz had created this really comprehensive and powerful matrix structure that ties everything we've been talking about together.
And here it is, the master plan. This matrix shows how it all connects. You've got the 7 production steps we just walked through as the columns across the top. And then you have the 5 core principles of integral journalism as the rows down the side. This is basically a practical guide showing how each principle can be applied at every single stage, transforming journalism from the inside out.
But just as he was finishing all this work, Schultz started to realize that this matrix might be more than just a process. He suspected that it was pointing to a whole new paradigm for journalism, one that could completely change how we even think about the field itself. But what is that new paradigm? Well, we're going to dive deep into that in our next explainer. See you then.